Thanks for joining us again at the Gods and Spirits channel. Um, I'm here with Sandra-Cole, tarot reader and author, and of course actress in the His and Hers theatre company. Although I think most of your occult and magic related work has been in tarot reading and writing.
Yes, although some of the things that we have done as original plays have also been quite esoterically themed as well. And the way that we work our Shakespeare plays on His and Hers Theatre Company has been throughout bringing out all of the magical elements of each one of the plays that we have worked in. Yes.
And in novels such as Wide Awake, which you when did you publish Wide Awake again?
Um, I want to say 2014. I I wrote it while I was doing my master's in Newcastle, and so that it would have been 2015 then, because I was working the novel itself while I was in London. That's when I met my husband, Stephen, also known as Stevie, and we actually decided to come here to Glastonbury and make an acting lifestyle, an artistic lifestyle, and I decided to self-publish it, and so yes.
And and so are there themes um, of myths, divinities, or indeed drinking
Um,
in such a novel, or any of your other writings?
kind of in all of my writing there is a lot of my own personal spiritual path, which I have fictionalized for yeah for obvious reasons. Sometimes I have spoken about very, very specific experiences and how I have um, worked my way through trauma, or worked my way through um, like the darker episodes of my life through my spiritual path. So in Wide Awake in itself, there is probably a lot more of it than in other bits of my writing. Regarding divinity, you would find a little bit more of that in my short story collection, Tales from the Rooftop. And regarding any kind of alcoholic related themes, I don't have any specific themes about them, but there are some of the short stories in which I make, you know, a little bit of an allusion to them. Yes. Mhm.
Oh, that's good. So the reason we decided to make this video was really just sort of a bit of spontaneous creativity that came from us having a little party of our own with Stephen and some other friends, um, where we dressed up as divinities um, or deities or beloveds that were close to us. I came as a quite wild boxer version of Bacchus, and you of course attended as the Greek poet Sappho.
I myself was Sappho. Um, that was mostly because my husband and I like to try to do couples um, costuming whenever we can, and she was in her feminine that day. My husband is gender fluid, so she was Sivi that day, and we were trying to think about a mythological couple in which they were both feminine. And ironically enough, because so many of those stories have been so Christianized, there's more of a there were friends kind of element to all of their stories. So we couldn't think of a specific one that we would have the costumes for, that we would feel like we were both, actually, doing, these mythical goddesses or these mythical characters justice. And we decided to go as Sappho and the moon. So that's what, yeah, that's where we. And so when we got to the party, because as everyone watching here knows that Drew is so knowledgeable regarding alcoholic amazing mixtures and themes, etc. I just came in and asked, so what have you got that could be a good mix for Sappho? And we didn't really know. I think we both thought at the same time that the best thing would be something that had to do with pomegranates, which you didn't have. But there was an absolute perfection, I would say, in the elements that we did have, because what we ended up doing was mixing this sparkling apple, raspberry, and rose brassé with this apple and cinnamon gin. Now, this gin also has a tea bag inside the bottle. It's not the way that you would find it in the shop. It's something that Drew, Annabelle, did you guys do it together? Or was it just your idea?
It was just my idea. Okay. I had actually been shopping with Stephen on a different day in Wales in Tesco, and I would have just got an ordinary gin had it been cheap enough. But given the price of this was so close to any of those, I just thought, to hell with it. I'll get this flavoured gin. And I'll still put a tea bag in it, because only the night before I had acquired in the same store some Twinings sleep tea, which is spiced apple, vanilla, chamomile, and passion flower, which obviously goes quite well with a.
It goes amazingly well with Sappho, I would say. I mean, all three elements have apple to begin with, which has so many, like the symbology of the apple itself is just quite beautiful in and of itself. The first thing that comes to my mind, considering that Sappho is, such particularly wise poet, then I would say, there's that, the wisdom, and then there's also the pentacle that you would find inside of the apple, which is kind of quite elemental in its own right.
It is representative of the magical 5 elements, which of course Hellenic culture first built a lot of its spirituality on.
Exactly, yes. And then I thought, well, the raspberry, it can be so very sweet or so very sharp, and I thought that's Sappho. Such beautiful sweet poetry, and such sharp tongue, such sharp wit. Just thought that's quite nice. And rose brassé, well, I just thought, well, that's just poetry. That just sounds like poetry. Cinnamon, we got so much cinnamon in here as well. It's quite, the symbology for me, the way that I'm feeling it, the symbology of the spice, the symbology of it can be about the awakening of sexuality, which is something that we were trying to convey in there as well. It can be about wisdom as well, and it can be about just personal passion, regardless of whether it's sexual or not, just personal passion. And like it feels kind of like such a fiery kind of spice in its own right.
I feel like all of that really comes together in the apple.
Yes. Absolutely. And then, of course, there is the passion flower inside, which is, quite representative if we think about it that way as well. And the vanilla, which is such it's such an essential flavor, such an essential spice. You can't really you know you can't really do anything kind of big and amazing with that vanilla, to be honest. When we're talking about like big mixes of flavors, and it used to be such a difficult ingredient to get, so it's such a I don't know, it creates this kind of rich, sumptuous kind of element to it as well. And because of it being a sleeping tea bag, well, tea bag, the way that we thought to call the drink was Sappho's Dream, which I thought was just beautiful.
So let's just give this a go then. I mean, I feel like you've put so much thought into this since then that it's like you're very blatantly claiming this in Sappho's name, which is great. Which is great. I remember I felt like it was definitely a divine combination, and I wasn't sure if I dedicated to Sappho at the time. I possibly poured you quite a bit there, but maybe you can see if the ratio is better, closer to 1-to-1 for you, and I can try the weaker ratio.
It's very nice, as it is. Cheers.
And it's funny actually, like, I mean, just at room temperature, it's like the vanilla really comes through, really blends through with the
sumptuous,
spices.
like I was saying, right? It kind of feels like,
And the bells of St. John.
Nice.
And it's just such not just rich, but really almost swift and sweeping combination of flavors.
Yes, yeah. It creates almost a velvety ribbon quality to it.
Yes.
Like when you grab a velvet ribbon and you pass it over your skin, it creates that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have wanted to ask at first, I suppose, that how well you know Sappho's poetry or her life.
Not as much as I would want to. I have only recently started getting to know her a little bit. I think there is a lot of issues with, like I was saying before, is I mean, me coming from a Catholic culture, and like unfortunately, there was a lot of these subjects that I really wasn't taught, or I wasn't aware of, as it were. That I wasn't like I couldn't have tried to get to know more of them because I wasn't even aware of them.
Yeah.
So I only really genuinely started to get to know Sappho a little bit more since moving to Glastonbury. And even then, it's still kind of a difficult subject to have like fuller conversations with people, because she's still not kind of not as much of a figure that is known for a lot of people.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, the what's ended up being like the most renowned aspects of, about Sappho and her life are that we knew she was a lover of women, and we knew she spent practically her entire life on Lesbos, and this is from where we get the word lesbian, and beyond that, I mean, a lot of people understand that she's been a figurehead of literary wisdom in Hellenic culture, and particularly the culture which emerged from Lesbos ever since, simply as a region.
Yeah.
But beyond that, yes, there isn't a lot known of her work because of all the religious suppression.
Exactly that. Yeah. Yeah. And even what the little that we do know about her was just so completely sanitized. So the way that I, let's say, like, grew up hearing about her, as it were, was kind of this poet who chose to not have any kind of sexual relations with anyone, because she so happened to live in an island that was essentially just full of women, which just doesn't work either way, because no, and even, you know, it's almost it's almost an aggression to asexual people as well.
Yes.
You like, you don't want to explicitly talk about her being a lesbian, and you end up, making her an asexual, which wasn't the case, and that's really mean, because that's not what it is. And like, either, like, both groups get the worst of it,
Exactly.
in the way. Yeah. And so I know that the little that I have been able to get to read about her, get to read of her, is it's just quite inspiring in its own right. So yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, do we know that it was mostly Selene or the moon that she wrote about?
There, we know that there is some connection with the different aspects of the moon goddess, including Diana as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's so to the drink, I would say there's almost like a muted crispness, and perhaps the spicy qualities do actually. I would say they invoke, in fact, a lot of that particularly vibrant and Mediterranean heat driven culture of Lesbos.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what the raspberry and the cinnamon make me think of when I was talking about the sharpness of it, and the passion of it, and the passion flower, of course.
It's not a combination people. Yeah, it's not a combination of people often think of raspberry and cinnamon. Even in a pie, you wouldn't normally find the two together.
I think it's a lucky strike kind of drink. We ended up just making it on a whim, because I came into the kitchen and just asked you, why have you got that can be turned into Sappho's drink, and you showed me this, and I said, oh yeah, and it just kind of we just kind of took it from there, and it just felt right. And I think that in my life there's so much that I work with that's just synchronicity, and I just think maybe this is one of them. Yeah.
I have a sense, giving it more thought, that perhaps if it were any deity that this could be associated with, it probably would be Diana. So
that would also make sense.
Giving it the name of Sappho's dream seems actually very appropriate.
Yeah, maybe because she was dreaming of Diana. Yeah. Or, I know that there's not Diana's what we know about Diana has also been so sanitized as well.
Yeah.
And considering that it's likely that most of what was sanitized was that she was also a lesbian,
Hmm.
then that's actually really interesting. I don't know enough about the alliteration of the moon goddess as Selene to speak about her in that way as well.
Hmm.
But if we are talking about Sappho and Diana, then it would almost make sense that it has that kind of element to it as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. With
Yeah.
particularly with the inclusion of passion flower.
Mm. Mm.
What else am I picking up from this?
Mhm.
I mean, the the sweetness in it is quite muted as well. It doesn't go particularly over the top. It sort of hits the tongue and then it rests.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I can feel that both from the apple and the vanilla. Just kind of making a bit of a layer together.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I can only guess that I suppose it does. There is a certain sense conveyed there of it being um, like the embrace of two women and like the passiveness of that. I was it's kind of odd. Like in the first months that I was sort of out to my friends and openly in my first relationship with a man, I was asked by a straight girl what the kind of energy him and I had, and if we were sort of um, quick to be almost aggressively all over each other because, as she understood it, with lesbian relationships, it was completely. I mean, obviously, this is all based on assumptions of people who have been,
Yes.
yeah, who've been raised in a heteronormative culture, and they only have so much awareness about those kind of relationships. But then again, obviously, we're also brought up to assume in most ways that feminine energy is almost inevitably a passive energy, and we've only in our upbringing we're only ever pretty much expected to believe that that any feminine energy, any female feminine persona in a romantic relationship is passive.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you mean.
Mm.
I get the feeling that if it's true that the mythology of Diana has been incredibly sanitized and she was indeed a lesbian, I get the feeling that she was very, very much the active component in her relationships. I get that from her quickness to get revenge on the men who tried anything with her.
Yes.
I get that she was kind of I mean, it's kind of a bit of an odd position for me because I am bisexual, but I've never actually had a relationship with another woman, like in and of itself. Like I said, Stevie, when she's Stevie, she's a woman. Um, I would say that we are both the active whenever we want to be, as it were. But I've never actually seen it as. I know exactly what you mean about the like teaching that there is, that kind of passivity in women, and I've just been thinking what you're referring to with this flavor I think what I would put it as is the that kind of gentle and nurturing embrace that might come before or after sex in and of itself. And it's kind of it, yeah, if I were to put a name to that or a moment to that in terms of what we're talking about, for me it would be that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've definitely designated that this is a sexy drink.
I mean, to me all drinks are sexy. But no, I mean particularly with cinnamon.
Yes.
I think things with cinnamon just kind of have to be sexy.
Yeah, I mean, ever since
Yeah.
I've been, giving talks on food and magic, that is definitely something I would say of cinnamon. That although you would mostly use it in wintry foods, it's always something that can make a great addition to foods that are fertility themed.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say with this one, I don't know. I get the feeling that it's a very that it's meant to be soothing and robust at the same time.
Yes.
As such, just as a drink in itself, and just kind of thinking about it with the mix of everything else. We're talking about the mix of the rose and the raspberry, as well as like the apple that we've got everywhere.
Because that was something I felt was inevitably noticeable as well, that the rose does mute that much of the flavours and dampens them, and I suppose does become a major component of that whole passivity and nurturing, as you say. In what comes across from it.
Yeah. But then again, we've got the vanilla, which just pretty much boosts every other flavor. It's kind of the superpower of vanilla is that it's exquisite in its own right, and then when you add it to other things, it makes everything else explode in flavorfulness.
And see, to me, I mean, obviously, vanilla and rose is probably something that's largely underused in drinks and probably food as well. Considering how often people could quite easily use rose syrup and they never think of it. That's a tip to any budding chefs out there who are sort of missing new ideas or can't think of anything. Try vanilla and rose syrup. See if you come up with something. To me, also, what I think of there is particularly with all the bite that comes with the apple flavour. It's I would say what it conveys is poetry, and particularly the fact that, from what we know at least, Sappho expressed her love, I guess, more deeply in poetry than anything else.
Oh yes.
So yeah, you totally win on that one.
I actually started getting to know Sappho a little bit more through a friend that we made when we were putting on Macbeth. Yeah. I was playing Lady Macbeth and as well one of the witches, and our mutual friend was the stage manager.
Hmm.
And that's kind of when I started having a bit more conversations 4 years ago. But of course, my brain is just kind of quite scattery, and I can never focus on things like for too long. It's just and over the last few years, ADD has just kind of been whoa. So I
I know the
haven't,
feeling.
yeah. So I haven't really been able to like fully kind of intentionally just kind of submerge myself um, into Sappho's works as much as I would like to.
Mm.
But that's something that I have kind of, yeah, set out as a goal, as it were.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this is definitely a mixer that works well as expressing Sappho and expressing her
Mm.
dreams of of the moon goddess and her embrace with her.
Mm.
I think that's really
Mm.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We will come back in part two when I will put to the test our other combination with JJ Whitley pink cherry gin. Having had something that's produced in Limehouse or named after Limehouse and having a tea bag floating in it. We're now we will move on to a drink that merely claims on its label to be quintessentially British.
We will let you know.